people that aren't going to do very well in life, according to the school. One boy, they said, we can't even get him to sit down. And they're coming there and finding working. But these weren't young people. They were making beats. They were writing lyrics. They were burning CDs and selling them in the playground. They were really enterprising.
I'm in court now on trial, but the jury don't look like me. They don't sound like me. They can't relate to me.
They're not from the area.
And they're from an older generation. They're not even from the area, same area as me.
Yeah, they don't.
So how are you trying to say that this is fair or this is what it's supposed to be when the structures in place aren't? But we are the minority within the population as a whole, but within the prison system, we're the majority. Or there's higher representation.
Coming from Liverpool Street and heard some language that I haven't heard before because someone was talking on the train. They weren't speaking English, and somebody said, fucking England. Speak English.
Wow.
That's
a throwback. But I feel like the language that was used and the terms in the whole Brexit campaign, like pro-Brexit, kind of brought back that sort of energy. Like remember you asked, has racism kind of changed? Like I think it's gone from, like you said, over in your face kind of abuse at street level to a structural and what's the word I'm looking for? Structurally, it's just structural. Like within employment, within the police, even.
I think there's a lot of, especially with the police and with employment, I think there's a lot of unconscious bias as well. In regards to whether it's the criminal justice system.
I think unconscious bias is too sweet a term.
It is.
It makes it sugarcoats it.
Yeah, of course. But that's
Personally speaking, unconsciously biased. I don't know that I'm being biased. Come on. You're not giving a job to someone because you just don't relate to them or you don't like the look of them. That's not unconscious. You consciously are doing that.
And if you look at systems and structures, and if you look at, for example, how the criminal justice system works and how it operates on a day to day. If you look at who's in it,
who makes up the population?
Who works there? Who makes the decisions? Who makes the plans? Who makes the regulations? Who puts the policies and plans in place? And who's on the receiving end?
Of course.
And so no one's going to say out loud, well, though some people do. These systems and structures are racist.
They are.
And how they operate are racist. People that
they are.
Of course.
You feel it, and when you look at how various things are applied, you can see it, and when you start to look at the statistics, you can count it.
You can basically prove
because from the stats, like for example, in the prison population, Black and Asian ethnic minorities or minority ethnicities make up the majority. But we are the minority within the population as a whole. But within the prison system, we're the majority. Or there's higher representation according to a percentage. So, for example, I don't know what the percentage of Black and Asian ethnic minorities make up to the population. I can't remember exactly.
Is it 9%?
Is it 9%? Wow. So, big up Omar for that one. We make up 9% of the general population, but within the prison system, we make up, I think, like 35-40% of it.
And when you look at younger prisoners, then the numbers are
even more.
It's moving up to the 50%. I think for the younger ones, and you also have to look at how the prison population has expanded over the last 30 or so years.
They built a few prisons, haven't they?
They brought new super jails in.
It's about 80, almost 90,000 now.
Yes.
So it's and if you look at, I think it's doubled in the last 30 years, and the UK locks up more people than most of Europe.
Of Europe, we lead in that.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
yeah. That is actually
Because I remember when we went to that War in the Babylon exhibition, and the gentleman, what was his name again? Stafford Scott, big him up all the time. He was cold. He was explaining about Borstalls and Sod's Law, and how from that policy, that Sod's Law policy, the Borstalls were filled. But as soon as that policy kind of was removed, they had to close down the Borstalls because now they ain't got no one to fill them. But I feel like that change in legislation and the policies that were created, it's almost like we're going to keep that Sod's Law, but we're going to dress it up. And I feel like the policies that were, as the times kind of move on and the governments change, it's keeping the same policies, but just wrapping them up or tweaking them.
And some governments will say out loud that they're there on a law and order ticket, so they have to show that they're being
tough on crime.
That was a slogan once. I think that was Blair. Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime.
Yeah.
So if they've come in on this law and order ticket, then build more prisons.
Yes.
And if you build more prisons, I mean, if you create a category, and the category might be prisoner. If you create the space, you've got to fill it.
You've got to fill it, exactly.
You have to put someone in there. You have to put someone in the category of offender or prisoner or criminal or whatever it is, and you have to fill the buildings.
Yes.
And there's it's quite a lucrative.
It's a very lucrative business.
It's quite a lucrative business.
I mean, prisons have become private.
And
privatised business.
Yeah.
So
It's ridiculous.
Privatisation reaches everywhere.
Yes.
Privatisation. They even privatised the probation service
Yeah.
at one point.
It was CRC. They've just gone back to MPS now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And when you look at how that split was made, what they call the low risk offenders.
Low risk and medium risk offenders or CRC, and the high risk offenders or MPS.
Yeah. And the CLC is the private
Yes.
route where you can build your profit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they called the harder to manage
was government run or
was government run.
Yeah.
And so the taxpayer money was going into the
But you know what? Yeah, because I done a lot of work with CRC, to be fair, and I feel as if, even though it's basically a business, it's run as a business, I think the atmosphere in there was quite different. So, for example, when you walk into a CRC, it's open plan, so you can speak to the receptionist right there. It's nice and setting. But when you go to MPA, when you go to like a National Probation Service probation office, you've got a glass in between. It's not really personal, and I mean you can't really get to know anyone. Like feels like a prison setting, like you're in the prison waiting room.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think regarding the CRC, they've done it really well. And,
I think that's the psychology of it.
Yeah,
that's
I feel so. Yeah, could be, but I feel as obviously, and they've done a lot of stuff like prison initiative, like offender initiative stuff. Like there was hiring ex-offenders.
Yeah. CRC. Yeah.
CRC was hiring ex-offenders as like not as case managers or probation officers, but like it was like like a special role where
almost
you
consultancy.
work with and working with the harder to reach people, ex-offenders that were there. They had people doing roles as like community. They wouldn't call it community service anymore. They was calling it something
like
else.
Community restoration or something like that.
And they'll have them driving the vans and taking obviously people that are on whatever license or whatever probation order that was on out there. So I think that they was trying to do a lot of, like
different initiatives.
Yeah, different kind of initiative compared to what National Probation Service was doing.
But according to the government, these things were failing, or
apparently it wasn't working out. It wasn't doing well. So,
but when you're selling these big contracts, they were happy to accept the money for them.
It's crazy. It is very crazy.
It's really interesting to hear it from that side. So. Yeah, because what you hear is that I mean they were kind of leeching, they were draining money, and they weren't managing. They weren't managing the
actual impact,
the contracts in the way that they should. So that didn't look like a success. But even when for some of these outsourced companies, even when they clearly don't look like they're doing things properly, they still carry on.
Yeah, they don't.
They still carry on. So when if you think about
Like G4S.
G4S, Serco.
Yeah.
So all those places that all have an import into the criminal justice system in some way, whether they're whether it's the transport, whether it's the prison
Security,
itself, whether it's
courts,
the staff, and so on. And those companies like those are deemed too big to fail.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what mistakes they make. At one point, I cannot remember which one of them it was.
It was G4S.
They were claiming for prisoners that were dead or didn't exist.
Yes. Or or things that weren't, or cells that were empty, or things like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they paid back a big.
Yeah, they paid a sum back.
They paid back a large sum back.
It might be Serco actually.
I think
might be.
But they continue. They continue. So part of the mirage, part of the myth is that if it's privately run, and now remember, if it's a public service and it's privately run, we're paying for it because we're paying the tax that pays for it. Yeah. If it's privately run, then automatically it's better. That's part of the myth.
Yeah, that's part of the facade, isn't it? Yeah.
It's part of the kind of, it's partly how we get to 14 billion on a test and trace system by Serco that doesn't work.
Exactly.
Doesn't work.
Exactly, but it's Serco, so we're gonna.
I do understand. I do understand that. I get that.
But but your point is a good one, because you have to look at the experiences of the people who are
within it.
Obviously,
as well.
The service users of it. Let's say, for example, even private prisons. And government, like HMP government prisons,
are different, innit?
Are totally different. Yeah. It's like I was, like for me personally, I was in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
Then I went to a private prison, and it was totally like even just the cells were different. There was nice, there was showers, the food was better. It was different in little ways.
You can tell that it was a privately run.
Yeah, it was privately run, and there was like some sort of a bit more money spent into it. And kind of in how they run it as well.
A bit more control in the budget.
Literally, but then again,
flexibility.
But then again, they're more business focused. Like I'm guessing, so obviously to get what they need, they're gonna. Do you know what I mean? But I do understand where you're coming from. I think there's some good. There's some good, but there is a lot of bad. There's more bad than there is good.
It's kind of overlooked. It's like painted over the cracks, kind of.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, I'm old school. I think that there are some services that the market shouldn't have a hand in. I think there are some services that are part of society that belong to us all. Education, health, justice.
Yeah.
They belong to us all, and I don't necessarily see that there's a place for organisations to make profit out of education, health, and justice, because
things that are trying to better people, help people.
It's part of it's part of who we are as a society, or who we're supposed to be. But then, I'm an old revolutionary, so what can I say?
No, it's valid. It's very valid. It's very valid because, like how these so-called institutions now. Like we're talking about racism, and how I feel like it's institutional structured now. For example, there's that psychology within these institutions that they will put a black person or a person of color or or a woman that show that we're diverse. Yeah, we accept you. But as on the receiving end of these services, it's a different story.
Well, of course.
You're meant to be judged by a jury of your peers, apparently. But for example, I'm using me.
Yeah.
I'm in court now on trial, but the jury don't look like me. They don't sound like me. They can't relate to me.
They're not from the area.
And they're from an older generation. They're not even from the area, same area as me.
They don't.
So how are you trying to say that this is fair or this is what it's supposed to be when the structures in place aren't? Do you get what I mean? And then they will put out something like, this is what we're doing, but on face level. But within it, it's not really that. Like, remember we was talking about touching on that. Your experience working in the civil servant as civil servant. So do you want to tell us that little anecdote? I believe it's in the book as well.
Yeah. So I was just I was saying before. So the first job I had, I left school when I was 16, and I worked in Stratford, and it's the Olympic Park now, but it used to be a freight terminal. So they'd unload these containers.
Wow.
These containers. At this freight terminal, and so my job, because I had O levels, so I got this job as a clerk, was to tear off the invoices and put them in number order. That was my job.
Wow.
But anyway, there was it was very hierarchical. I was a clerical assistant, and you had to work your way up the ranks, get more qualifications, work up the ranks. I was on the very, very low ranks. But there was one black guy there, and he was older than me, so he was the previous generation, and he was very senior. So really, we should have been. But every morning he would come in, and the white boys in the office would start off with this kind of woo, and then a monkey charm, and sometimes they'd do the
actions
as well. Wow. And he'd laugh it off, and then he would sit there and he would just fold out his newspaper, check the stocks or shares, whatever he had to check for the day, and he just brushed it off. And then one day there was me and another girl there, and said, why'd you put up with this? And he said, remember, my dear, we're guests.
That mentality.
Yeah, and it was a different time, and I suppose for him and for people like him at that time, survival strategy, coping mechanism, and all of us can, even if we can't put ourselves in his situation, all of us can think of times when we're in a situation where we have to think of the survival strategies and the coping mechanisms to get us to the next day. He'd been working there for however long. That's how we managed it, So when we're at those places in our lives where we just got to get to the next day,
You got to move forward, you got to push on. And moving on, I forgot to mention actually that you're a professor of grime.
Doctor.
Come on,
sorry,
Dr. Grime.
Sorry, let me get it right.
Come on.
Doctor of grime in the house.
Come on.
Come on. That is. Like I always say sick, but it is sick.
No, it's cold. It is different. Because we grew up on grime.
We grew up on grime. That was our generation kind of thing. Like, that was like the new thing. Like, like nowadays it's drill.
Yeah.
Like drill and trap kind of thing.
Yeah, and all that stuff,
Grime, I think, set that level for drill and thing to be about. Now, looking at grime now, and you touch on it as well, the sonic landscape within Newham. How did you get into that, first of all? How did I get into
grime?
Yeah, like
I'm the wrong generation. Definitely, I'm definitely out of my lane. I'm definitely out of my zone.
No, you know your stuff. Definitely.
I used to run my own business. I had a business in Silvertown.
Okay.
And so I ran a training business. My business partner was a graphic designer, so he had all of these fancy Macs and all this kind of stuff. And we used to Newham asked us to take some young people on work experience.
Okay.
So I think when you got to year 10 or something like that, you had to do a week of work experience. So they said to us, we're not sending you our good ones, basically.
Oh, okay.
So they said, so not the ones that were kind of the ones that were going to get 5 A stars and all the rest of it. And they, can you take? So everyone will come in, and no one was interested in business. Okay. No one wanted to hear me telling them about NVQs, really and truly.
Okay.
So they turn up. No one had a pen, but everyone had a mobile phone with the ringtones.
The Walkman thing,
They had the sound on. And once they saw we had, they'd be looking on MySpace. Everyone was listening to the same music, and then you start to become more aware. I used to heir it at home. If I got on the bus, I'd hear it on the bus, and I didn't pay any attention.
Probably me.
If I went to my sister's house, my nephews would be doing all this, that, and the other, and it was just there.
Okay.
And I paid it no mind whatsoever. And then, bit by bit, I think I started talking to the young people, asked them what they were doing. And I thought, this is really interesting. These are the young people, they say, are not going to get this. They're not going to that. They're going to end up neat, not in education, employment, or training. That was the label. That was the category.
Yeah.
So these are young people that aren't going to do very well in life, according to the school. One boy, they said, we can't even get him to sit down, and they're coming there and finding working. But these were young people. They were making beats. They were writing lyrics. They were burning CDs and selling them in the playground. They were really enterprising. So that's what my PhD ended up being on. It was on music and entrepreneurship, but particularly grime, and how young people use their passion for music to create work opportunities, not just for themselves, but for other people as well. And also to step into new identities so that you weren't neat or whatever category of deficit that people wanted to apply to you. You were an entrepreneur, you were an MC, you were a musician, you were an event promoter.
You was a businessman.
You're a businessman. This kind of thing. So that's what my PhD was on, and that's what the first book was about. Yeah.
Kudos for that.
And so by default, because the young people listening to grime, and that's where the enterprise was, I end up listening to grime. Yeah. And I came in when you came in with Criminal Devil and so on. Cold.
Cold. Big up Criminal though. Cold. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's my guy. Yeah. But so you see, like with the sonic landscape, you say, so in grime, you can see how, like you even touch on it in the book about how through videos people are marking their environments, local landscape, landmarks, and you can see that kind of that comes through into the identity through the music as well. Like for example, you had like Nasty Crew that was like Plasto, Stratford, like a collective, and then you had like Newham Generals that was like Forest Gate, and you know what I mean. So through that, do you feel like what was the strength that come through that music, and how did that and the benefits that it brought for us?
I think that I think one of the things that was so remarkable for me was how we've talked about, haven't we? We've talked about what Newham, not just Newham, but other places were the same or similar. Yeah. What it was like to be young, black, and growing up in these places at that time when our parents had come from somewhere else. We've spoken about how difficult and challenging it was to find a sense of belonging, to find a place that felt like home. And in all of that, what this next young generation did was take all of that with the kind of sonic nourishment of their parents' record box and create something that was new. Create something that was new, and that not only spoke to them, but other people in other parts of the world. It resonated with them as well. And so something that was very, very local becomes this kind of worldwide
sound, innit?
Built from I'm not going to say nothing because but very DIY. Looks really individual, but then when you really check it, it's people working together because they want something to happen, and that took my breath away. And then beyond that, how it changes the people that make it, how it changes the people that make it, how it changes the people that listen to it, because then you start to see people that look like you doing these things, and it makes the world open up. And because people were traveling because of the music, they were going to different places, even just out of their area. So leaving Newham and going to wider London, leaving London and going to the surrounding counties, leaving the surrounding counties and going
to other cities and
other
towns,
cities, going to Europe. And when you travel, your world opens up in a completely different way. You start to think about and develop a bigger and broader version of yourself.
You get a way almost a global identity in a sense.
In a way that it's less easy to do if you're in a very small and confined space. You can imagine it, but sometimes you can't always see yourself there. And I think that's what it gave people, that sense of belonging, that sense of making and creating something that was specifically yours, that didn't belong to the previous generation. In some ways it's kind of being handed on, but it takes a different shape. And you can't underestimate the cultural, economic and social significance of grime. It goes beyond the music itself.
Without a doubt.
Allowed people to make a living, allowed people to
kind of break those boundaries.
Break boundaries. And grime's pop now,
it is. It definitely is. That's on adverts.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That is, it's good.
Before this same genre of music, we've been saying, oh no, it invokes violence. It's going to do this, it's going to do that. In a decade or so, we've gone from there to, it being just
labels want that grime. They want that
You got D-Double on IKEA adverts now.
There you go.
You've got kids doing drill songs for an advert for, I think it's Asda clothing.
Yeah, I saw the Asda
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
they're doing a drill tune.
It's
like,
cold.
we're in the playground wearing the unit. Like,
Yeah.
I was like,
it's crazy.
Yo,
But you
It's
couldn't,
crazy, isn't it?
you couldn't have UK drill without Grime putting the
No,
foundations
right,
down.
exactly.
Just like with Graham, I think it's Garage, and that kind of laid the foundation for them.
Yeah, so
Dubstep.
all of these
Yeah.
things building on one to the other, progressing and moving people forward in different and distinct ways. And I think it speaks to the creativity, the hope that comes from creativity. I think it speaks to the resilience of the young people that we have in and among us. And I think that what we need to do is remember that and focus on that, because a lot of the time what happens is we focus on all of the things that are going wrong, and we forget to shine a light on all the things that are going right, despite everything.
Yeah,
despite everything.
And that gives you that sense of hope that we can still move forward and progress. Course. We can even outshine all the darkness that goes on. You know what I'm saying?
Look at what you're doing here.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, look at what you're doing.
We're doing
here.
all right. We're doing all right.
We're trying.
Yeah, man.
You know, even the trying is something, because for ways in ways which we know already, some people don't even get the chance to try.
It's true.
But
Yes,
you're
definitely.
doing this thing. You're doing it in this way, and it's a lovely thing to see.
Thank you for that.
It really is.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So look, just to round it off, thank you very much for taking the
Thank
time
you.
coming out here. Like, definitely giving us a different appeal as well,
definitely.
and a different perspective. So it's been wonderful having you on. Don't forget, Terraformed is out.
Cop that.
Yeah.
Show the full cover.
Oh, you want to? Sorry, is it? You can see it? Yeah. Yeah. Listen. Yeah.
Listen, cop
Terraformed.
that.
Make sure you get
that, man.
available. Yeah. Repeater books, Amazon, everything. Go and get that. Definitely worth reading. So, Joy, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And giving us your insight into loads of different aspects.
No, definitely, man. That was very insightful.
Yeah.
Can't lie.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Honestly.
Cool. Dr. Joy White.
Yeah, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Thank you,
In the
thank you.
house. Cool.